Your Excellency, just before we bring in the former deputy governor, you said that governors are laboring under what you described as a tyranny of unfunded mandate. Maybe you permit me to say underfunded mandate. You get some mandate, but it is not, you get some funding, but it is not sufficient. So that would be underfunding, much more appropriately. You say tyranny.
Well, that's a semantic debate, Kingsley.
Actually, Your Excellency, the key word I'm actually driving at is a tyranny.
It is.
Because you have also said that there are some myths which you have tried to bust in the course of our interaction so far. Is it also a myth that governors have been described and are seen to behave, in some cases, like emperors, whereas we're in a democracy?
I don't know how people came about such a description of governors. Thankfully, you have my colleague who has been there. But, you know, in a democracy, especially a democracy that has emerged from a long period of dictatorship, there are bound to be residues of dictatorship and authoritarianism in that setting. That's a trite principle in civil-military relations. And it will take some time to wash this authoritarian mentality from our system, because even our people are guilty of it. When you call somebody who is a governor, executive governor, all this superficial honorifics imposes on him a mythical impression of himself as being next to God. And then you blame him for behaving exactly in that fashion. You've made an emperor out of him. So we all need to take collective responsibility for that. But that's not to say that we don't have personal responsibilities to be civil, to be responsible, to treat these positions as positions of responsibility that must also be used to manage societies well.
Your Excellency, let's get this clear. The manifestation of the emperor syndrome is seen, for instance, in the emasculation of the other two tiers of government.
Coming from federal?
Yes, from federal, on the one hand. But more particularly at the subnational level, you find that the other arms of government under you are generally fused into one. In some cases, the judiciary is excluded, but in most cases, how many state houses of assembly really function as state houses of assembly, as you will find at the national level? The judiciary, they go cap in hand, it is alleged, to the state governor. And the local government system, generally, is also virtually non-existent. You've tried to describe a while ago, state governors don't, dip their hands into the till of local governments. But whether it is in the personnel that run those local governments, not the public or civil servants now, the elected officials, chairmen or councillors, these are persons who are said to, in some cases, or if not in most cases, be handpicked by the governors. Members of the state houses of assembly, in general, are said to come from the slate, sanctioned by the governor. So that's where this notion comes from. And then perhaps you also need to clarify this for us, Your Excellency. You say maybe the hangover of military rule is a causative factor. But we had a Second Republic from 1979 to 1983, and we didn't have this kind of syndrome.
Okay. You've raised many issues. We had a Second Republic, but maybe what that speaks to is that the preceding military government was also more nationalistic and more patriotic and more responsible. That may well be the reason. And there's a difference between that Gowon, Murtala Obasanjo era and the period that has come after the Second Republic. I don't know. I'm just trying to respond to your issue on that. But on the other points you have made, there's no doubt that some people who have occupied these positions in the past have not lived up to the responsibilities of their office. I'm not here to make excuses for governors, but the set of governors that I preside over as chairman now, I would like to think are more responsive to the yearnings of their people and more accountable to them as well. But they are dealing with a myriad of challenges that would test even the most astute, the most responsive leader. And in their own ways, they are trying to address these issues.
Okay, let me cite a practical example.
Please do.
Just to buttress, what Kingsley talked about, the emperorship. There was a gentleman agreement between state governors and, of course, the presidency to grant bailout for state governors to meet up with some of their recurrent expenditures, including, of course, salary payments and pension payments and all that, with a single-digit interest rate over a 2-year tenure of repayment.
Right.
That has elapsed. And the federal government has come out to say, look, you need to pay, and we're going to get the state governors to pay. But here is the body of governors, again, exercising that emperorship status to say, look, we're not going to pay except certain conditions are fulfilled. Isn't that so?
You see, we're at a disadvantage. and I always get it when these things come out like this. You didn't have the full facts on the matter, you just...
No, the full facts that you
I don't know. No. Let me give you the full facts. Opinion is free, but facts are sacred.
What are the facts?
The facts are like this. Yes, there was a bailout, which was a loan, and I referred to this earlier, and there was an understanding to repay at a particular interest rate. And for the better part of my term in office as chair of the Governors Forum, states had adhered to their payments until COVID-19 intervened, unfortunately. It was COVID-19 that led us to collectively, not just governors, the National Economic Council collectively agreed that these payments would be suspended because oil prices had gone down, as I said, to $30. Resources available to state had reduced significantly. If you had to add on that, and this happens everywhere in the world, but as I said, it's not the full fact. That's the immediate fact.
Where did the issue of reconciliation come in?
That's not what I'm going to. This is a gentleman from Ramfak. Don't ask me, ask him. Federal government is a debtor to state. It's a net debtor to states. First and foremost, you take our money, it's federation account. When you look at what the exchange rate is on this outside, even the I&E window, even if it is to limit it to collecting our money on that alone, states will not be as shortchanged as they are. But it goes beyond that. There are monies that belong jointly to us. You have something called Abuja loot. Let me just use that as an example. These monies come back. When they come back, they go to federal government account. When they were taken, it was federation money. So it should be distributed amongst the tiers of that federation account.
Well, this was a gentleman's understanding.
Which we have not, a gentleman understand, which we have not reneged on. I've just explained it to you. It was a decision taken collectively that given the circumstances, states cannot pay, not that states will not pay. It wasn't a won't pay issue. It was a can't pay issue, and central banks came to terms with that.
And some forbearance that the states have in the meantime, I believe?
Absolutely.
Okay. Dr. Chris Akumas, former Deputy Governor of Abia State and current Commissioner on Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Commission. Of course, we have you regularly on Good Morning Nigeria, and a number of these issues that we've been discussing with the incumbent governor of Ekiti State, those issues do come up. But let us have your own perspective, because again, the general impression, which I would state to you, is that state governments generally do not appear to be pulling their weight, and which is why we're having the drag on national indices, whether in terms of human capital development or otherwise. His Excellency has tried to provide some explanation. But what's your viewpoint? You may wish to begin with the emperor syndrome and see how governors sometimes deal with their deputies. You were once one.
Thank you.
That's not a fair
You are right here, Your Excellency. So you can respond.
Thank you very much, Kingsley. And I want to, say citizens' greetings to, our viewers. And it's a pleasure to be here with my brother. We've come a long way, and we were in the trenches too together. So when he was talking, sometimes he almost went into his research area in explaining things. And those that know that background will understand what he was saying. I would like to start not from the emperor issue, but I will, of course, definitely speak about that. Let me start from the point of the bailout and the repayment and the actions taken. You see, Excellency, I think you were actually being what you should be as chairman of the Governors Forum and the executive governor, like you said it. The oil price went far below 20. At a point, in fact, there were publications that it was going for $1 per barrel, and we had the media everywhere, social and otherwise, was awash with the situation. So that economic situation has been a challenge. Before then, the deductions for the loans were going smoothly. Yeah. But then came a point where, at the end of the day, the states will say, we can't go back, because if we go back, we won't be able to pay salaries.
We're the state.
Okay.
I won't mention names. We're the state that went home with 90 million naira.
So I just want to... So it was so serious, and it has been a challenge for us at this level, working together. And that is why, if you look back, even just pre-COVID, the mantra and discussions has been the need to show up revenue. Absolutely. The Minister of Finance was here. Some other people were here, including the chairman of my commission, the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. And we have been on that trajectory, doing everything to see how to show up revenue. So far, that is still work in progress. And I'm happy we started. Otherwise, it would have been more than serious than what we have experienced. Nobody ever expected the pandemic, the way it turned out, the issue of lockdown and its effect on the economy. And then, just as we were smarting out of it and even praising ourselves that the negativity did not go up to the 6% projection, that we were just between about 3 point something, 2 point something to 3 points. Then suddenly came the NSAS with destructive appendage, and that again, because if you don't get enough revenue, what the subnationals depend on mostly, unfortunately, is what comes from the federation. And people misconstrue consolidated revenue fund from federation account.
Absolutely.
The federation account is the one that is available for distribution and disbursement. Consolidated revenue fund, any money that goes into that place is a federal government-controlled fund.
And not states alone.
No.
Not at all.
No, but you said it's but we'll come to that.
Okay, so there are two things, and maybe some may have seen news clips where we've been visiting certain agencies because we are trying to expand the revenue base and also plug. There are a number of leakages, but in a situation like what we have now, where people are finding it difficult to even sustain their livelihood and businesses, what tax is collected from profit? Is tax after profit. You don't tax people before profit. Mm-hmm. So if people are not making profits, where would you generate the tax? The FIRS, they're working day and night. We are meeting, trying to see, as next week will be FAC, it's like, how do we at least get something that the states can go back and pay salaries? So the issue of that, I'm not here to defend them. They are very important people, but we are all from subnational.
This is what you wanted to use?
No. I said we are all from subnationals. The issue of bailout, like he stated, it was a loan agreed to, and they were paying back until these issues came up. The discussions came up, and it was agreed to give a space, breathing space for them. And that did not only happen with the banks and the subnationals. If you remember, the loans and the grants and things that the CBN had control of, they also did that for even, partnerships. Mm-hmm. Even the ones with the commercial banks, they appealed to them to consider.
Absolutely.
And this is something that is done in banking, that when you have facility, it was a facility, whether you pay at 0 interest rate or certain low interest rate. When there are issues, you can discuss with your banker or the person that gives you the loan and agree to, restructure that loan repayment period. That was what.
Are you in sympathy with the governors?
On that, yes, because you see, it was necessary. I was sitting there the day we discussed about, and I was supporting the state policing, and former IGP Okiro was here saying no, and I told everybody here, I said, that fear that the states will take over. I said, the states are the ones funding, buying vehicles and all that. I did say that. So what is it? And we will still have the federal influence. So if any state goes out of line, they can still be, taken care of. Absolutely. And called to order. That was my argument. And now we are gradually going towards that, but in unorganized way and unorganized manner. And that's why we're having layers and layers of security, and there's so much confusion. And then the little funds available appear not to be properly managed. That's on that.
Yes, Dr.
Now,
Thomas, on the emperor, whether it's
yes.
the state of Kingsley talked about.
I'd like for you to say,
yes, I like, because somewhere here, today's Punch, one of the governors was quoted, as saying that the All Progressive Congress Committee, to look at reforming the entire political economic systems, recommended abolishment and reform of the local government system. And it's quoted as saying that the third tier of government is dragging the whole state government structure down. I'm
coming to that, but let's start from there. I don't think it's just the local government that gave this perception of emperor style of governance and relationship. It actually has to do more with the relationship between governors and the deputies, and then governors or the executive and the state assemblies, okay? Because we've had experiences where if a deputy is bold enough to say what should be said is considered as disloyalty. And in most cases, like I said, these wars are inaugurated by people within the system who now feed the governor from this side, feed the deputy from the other side, then wait at the middle to milk. And unfortunately, our constitution is vague, and that has been the problem. That is also the problem with the local government issues. The constitution listed 774 local government areas. That is as far as it went. There is no definition, no description of what this relationship should be. Then you created...
No, are you sure, Your Excellency? I mean, if you go to the fourth schedule to the Constitution, the functions of local governments are listed there.
I'm coming to that.
Yes.
I'm coming to that functions. And don't forget that the Constitution also created the joint account.
That's right.
Section 162.
JAC. And the state governments are...
JAC, which has been hijacked, allegedly.
Well, that is what, that is what the perception and what it seems, because, but then, how do you, because that provision is there, the state governors or state government must sign, there must be a sign-off from the local government people for the projects or actions that they are going to take. The question is, have we been producing quality local government chairmen and councillors that can actually come up, or people that just wait for the state to come up with programs and then it goes? And sometimes you may not know. Programs are decided even from the federal and it drops, and then these people. However, I think our local government administrative system is too bogus. It's too big. Even the states, sometimes I wonder why some states even have up to 28, 30 commissioners. What ministries are you? Since you don't have enough money, what are you expanding administrative costs for? Cost of governance has become very prohibitive. And we have been saying it, at least from our own, even during our recent presentation at the National Assembly, when we the Commission presented our budget. The cost of governance is growing by the day. Some states appoint up to 1,000 SAs. Up to 1,000, some more than that. And of course, because of perception, because of the way things are seen, it is taken that is good. They are providing a kind of employment, is political patronage, while other things, critical things, suffer. Going further, my brother, you have been through a lot just like some of us. You know that a number of executive governors have taken this executive thing too far. Humility in governance is very important. But then this issue doesn't stop at that level. At the federal level, there are things that are supposed to be held in trust for the federation. Things given to be held in trust for the federation. Differentiate federal government and federation. Most times our people don't even understand and appreciate the difference. They don't draw that line between the federal government and the federation. So things held in trust for the federation is being, unfortunately sometimes, wrongly, captured by those that are supposed to hold it in trust. By the time those that know and believe they have this thing in trust, they are come for it and say, we have something in trust, can we get something out of it? You discover that it's not there. We have a number of issues on that aspect, and that also affects. But be that as it may, The states that are working and the governors that are working in Nigeria, we know. Those that are not working, we also know. The perception is really key. People believe that government money is inexhaustive. There is always money. There's always resources.
Absolutely.
You need to be at that subnational level and see, even today and all that, the number of messages you get every day, because people believe there is money. The state, just allow me make this one point before you.
Yes.
Then the other thing that we must attend to, federal roads.
I want to come to that, yes.
Federal roads. The man in the state, as far as he or she is concerned, doesn't know whether that is federal road or not. And then some state governors are responsible and caring enough to even invest on making sure, because the people that ply the road regularly, the people that go through the sufferings, the people that lose their lives because of accidents are mostly from within that area.
Yeah.
But
Your Excellency, I need to interject because I know you've made some very valuable points. We're going to come to this issue of federal roads, which is part of the carryover of our military experience. When you started seeing the gazetting of highways as federal and otherwise. But let's also now return to some practical issues of governance today. Your Excellency, there are daily reports in the media of banditry, of kidnapping, armed robbery. And then, of course, we have a public health challenge arising from coronavirus. And in October, we saw a bust, as it were, of the youth challenge. What's your reading of the national situation?
The national situation is very challenging. There's no doubt that these issues have come together. And it's almost a perfect storm. COVID-19, NSAS, insecurity. There's a direct correlation between poverty and insecurity. We cannot take away from that. However, governments at the local level are trying what they could. That's what has resulted in this variegated nature of security outfits. Vigilante here, civilian JTF there, Amotekun here, and you have them all over the place as a response to that immediate challenge you mentioned. But we will not come to terms with our insecurity situation if we do not address the nature of our security architecture. Take intelligence. Intelligence gathering is not what it used to be, even in the days of Special Branch and CIB. Yet you have many more intelligence institutions proliferating the place. But in terms of basic information, diligent investigation, access to justice, all of these have almost collapsed. Even when you arrest, the next day, the IPO, the investigating police officer, is transferred to Port Harcourt. So for the next 6 months, if you cannot get him to come back to the court, that person is going to go free and return to perpetuate another round of heinous crime. So we need to tie together it's an entire gamut of our security sector governance framework. If you look at it, equipment, training, leadership, and accountability of our security structures, they're all defective. And you cannot put something on nothing. What has just exacerbated our situation is the poverty. So, and people are hungry. And when people are hungry, they tend to be more hungry. And for somebody who has nothing to lose, that's the most dangerous human being you can get. When somebody has nothing to lose, he's ready to do anything, perpetrate all types of violence. And we need to rescue our country from the brink. Collectively, security is a collective job. It's not just the job of the governor or the commissioner of police. All of us have a role to play in managing this difficult situation we are finding ourselves.
I just want to follow up on that because you touched on poverty, and it's often a recurring decimal. But how do we collectively crush our poverty numbers or the numbers of the poor at the state level? You've had the benefit of being at the state level where you are now, and also at the federal level. What do you find as the major challenge in cascading down policies formulated at the federal level and required to be implemented? You hear a lot being said at the federal level. Oh, agric this, agric that, all kinds of schemes, end power, and so on and so forth. Come again?
It doesn't get anywhere. I can give you a very quick example. Okay,
yes.
you have our social investment program, laudable program. But when you actually investigate the beneficiaries, how many? 2%? If 2 million people are the beneficiaries of, say, Empower, they're not even up to that. Empower collectively, since it started, maybe 400, 500,000. How many people do we have as graduates every year? Almost 10 million. One of the news items you read this morning put the poverty figure at over 100 million. So it's a token. When it's band-aid on bullet wound, it's not deep. That's how I see it at the state level. So you send this money, big deal, oh yes. Trader money, market money. How many people benefit from these things? They're just peanuts.
Well,
that's one.
What are the states on their own doing?
Exactly.
Responsibility on the state
For many of these things, states already have a whole range of empowerment programs.
And those ones are working?
They're definitely working better than the ones that come from federal. I can tell you that. In many states. But these kinds of things will not enable us to get out of poverty. As a matter of fact, they will deepen our poverty trap. What we need to do is provide access to opportunities, agriculture, entrepreneurship, support for businesses. Because we create this dependency syndrome that our people don't even want to work. They just want to sit back, collect these freebies, and then wait till the next one comes. You don't build a society like that. We need to let our people realize that the money is not there. But there is a perception, just as my brother said, that there is a limitless fund that the government holds. And before you wake up, he made a reference to it. I don't want to talk about it, but it's a daily challenge that every politician gets.
Okay, Your Excellency, we have just a few minutes, to go on this conversation.
I see you talking about pension fund. I would like to talk about that on your program.
Yes. I like to also ask, because Dr. Akomas
who allow you to speak to that, because they say governors want to borrow from pension.
So I won't come here and walk away without talking about that.
Yes,
we'll give you the opportunity.
Yes. So the federal allocation is not state governors' money alone.
No, it's not.
It's the federation.
As a matter of fact, it's only 26% that comes
Exactly.
to us
So
out of it,
what belongs to the state executives is the IGR,
which is improving
which is improving.
significantly.
By what means? By just tax system alone? What are the revenue nets?
That's the point. Dr. Koma said something. You can only tax somebody who has made profit. You can't tax before profit. But even at that, because states realize that they do not have a choice, they can't be wholly dependent on what comes on the federal because it's not enough. They are looking at various creative means of improving revenue generation. Many of them, many states that I'm aware of, are creating autonomous internal revenue services run by professionals, helping to block leakages. They are also putting in place technological advances to track who has what. If you have a property that is just sitting there, that you're not paying tenement rate, land use charge, you name it, better collection. In most states, there are no new taxes, but there are much more efficient way of collecting old taxes that have always been in the books, and they're increasing their revenue generation capacity. I can tell you that without that, many states would have been dead, collapsed completely, because Federation account has not done much for them.
Maybe you want to speak on the pension fund just before we bring.
Just to correct.
Dr. Akubas, very briefly, we know that you can write many paragraphs when you are speaking, but very briefly, before we give His Excellency the opportunity of wrapping up.
Yeah, let me say here, Your Excellency, and to all of us, one of the major problems we have within subnationals is prioritization. A number of the subnationals appear not to prioritize well. We talked about planning. I still make reference to Akwa Ibom State. When Akbani Simen came on board, he called everybody. They had a plan for the state over a long period of time. That was the state. When Obangata came, he called everybody. They reviewed that plan. So no matter your political party and where you come from, there's a development plan for the state. You key in there and take the aspect you want to. That is something the states should begin to do. Talking about security, intelligence. In the past, how many of us even knows who an NSO person was? But today, people brag. So how would people get intelligence? Now, on this issue, Your Excellency, you made a point, and I wouldn't allow you go with that. You said that the Federation has done nothing, the Federation account.
No,
Federation
account. No. I didn't say it's done nothing. I can't say that it's done nothing.
Okay, it's not that you are not getting enough.
If we on needs,
good.
We would not. Many states would not have been able to survive.
Good. Just as the federal at that federation level, we are working hard to expand the tax net, bring a number of. So also the states should do the same.
And when they do it, you talk about multiple taxes.
Yes, and you talk about when you okay. you have already said it that they are not talking about new taxes, but these are taxes that are existing, that are there in the books, but to enhance and make sure that they are collected. Now talking about poverty.
We cannot go, but Your Excellency, just on the pension.
I just must talk about the pension distortion that I've had. The position is very clear. States are not taking pension funds. Pension funds are not under the control of states. In the first instance, pension funds in Nigeria today does not have in its kitty anything close to 17 trillion. They don't even have 10 trillion. So how can you take what is not there? But what we did at the National Economic Council, which is made up of federal and states, chaired by His Excellency the Vice President, we were racking our brain in the heat of COVID, recession, everything. States are not just in the business of paying salaries. How do we meet the other needs of the over 90% of our population that do not earn civil service salary, teacher salary, health worker salary?
So what's the
and we decided that there should be a national infrastructure fund how do we fund this National Infrastructure Fund? We ensure that it meets the criteria that would enable the fund to operate like a bond. We take bonds now, we take structure. And it's companies that will take it, not states.
We will have to bring you back.
No, you may not have the time. I'm in the village. I live in Ekiti State.
Yes, you can join us now.
I don't live...
We are the technology, there's technology
okay, good.
now. So
if you want to do that, that's fine.
Do we have a commitment from you?
Oh, yeah, at all times. I mean, any opportunity to enlighten Nigerians, I would be happy to do so.
There's so much more to talk about.
But please, don't let this discussion go away. State governors are not taking pension funds.
All right, you heard it from
but they are not, is it say taking? Or what is that? Is it they are not borrowing pension funds or what?
They are not even borrowing pension funds.
What do they want to do?
Projects are borrowing pension funds, which is what projects do.
Right.
That's why you have bonds.
Who will be the guarantor of those funds?
The guarantor is the company that is created and the managers of the pension fund.
Yeah, because you cannot access the fund directly.
So
Government cannot access
no, we're not accessing it.
Yes, the executive governor of Ekiti State and, of course, chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, a two-time governor, former minister of the Federal Republic. It's a pleasure to have you, and we have also gotten commitment from you. Whenever we call upon you, we have your details, we have your contact. Thank you very much.
As long as you don't, as long as you stop making governors your battering ram, we are good people.
Dr. Chris Akamas, former Deputy Governor of Abia State and Commissioner, Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission, thank you as always for joining us on the program today.
Thank you.
All right, let's go on a short break. When we come back, we'll take our second topic for conversation.
The counsel of our fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
My name is Nando Jamda
Muhammad.
Stedita
Hussein Musa.
Roduna Joel Finji. Said Musa. John.
I'm a carpenter. I've been doing this for more than 8 years now.
Ina sai da plantain na kai kimamin shekara uku.
I've been selling my tomatoes for about 10 years now, and I do it for a better Nigeria.
Ina wannan sana'ar lemu ne domin Najeriya ta ci gaba.
Ina sa domin Najeriya ta kyau.
And you can see how we're doing our small little work to make Nigeria great.
As you can see, I'm a technician and I'm doing it to help myself and to help my generation.
Ina zaune ne a Plateau na business. Kuma ina yin wannan domin ci gaban ƙasar Najeriya.
For a better Nigeria.
This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
Do you know that 35% of every girl child and women are raped on a daily basis? Some are killed in the process, some take their lives in shame, others remain emotionally dead for life. It is sad. This culture is not ours, definitely not African. How did we allow bad culture to infiltrate and take over? Even if you lack fear for the law, what of fear of God? And you, why do you cover up rape acts when it happens? Remember, a problem shared is a problem half solved. Never cover any rape act because a rapist is a murderer. It could be you or your loved ones next. Women must be treated like the prize gem they are. Say no to rape.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
Newcastle United had their game called off last week. Will they be able to bounce back with a win when they welcome West Bromwich Albion to St James's Park? Find out this Saturday when Newcastle United hosts West Bromwich Albion on the Premier League Live, showing on the NTA network from 3:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Axis Bank, Papa Ijebu, Lipton Tea, and Close Up in association with Gold.com.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, participants in the Senior Executive Course 42 at the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies have completed their study on population and human capital development. Now, the one-year study was supported by the Development Research and Project Center under the Partnership for Advocacy in Child and Family Health at Scale. The graduation ceremony for the Senior Executive Course 42 comes up this Saturday.
And so with us to discuss this further is Professor Deng Peng Cha, Director of Research, National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, NIPS. Also there in the studio is Dr. Nasiruddin Usman, MNI, Acting Director of Studies, National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, NIPS. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Let's quickly find out from you the highlights of the presentation and recommendations you had to present, to the president, of course, when you had your parley with him.
Okay, thank you very much for having us on this program. Just like you mentioned in the introduction, the challenge given by Mr. President to the Senior Executive Course 42 is to conduct research on the challenge of population growth and to see how we can up our human capital development to address our burgeoning population. Last week, the participants of the course submitted the findings to Mr. President. One of the key findings we made in this research is that the country is facing demographic crisis. And what we mean by this, when you have a population that is growing at a very fast rate and you don't have appropriate human capital development to absorb the growth, then you have crisis. And therefore what we need to do is to see how we can convert this demographic crisis to demographic dividend. The other findings, when you talk of human capital development, you're talking of two major issues. You're talking of education and skills, and you're talking of health and well-being. Unless you develop your education with appropriate skills to provide the economic bedrock of the economy, and you have able, healthy people, then you have challenges. In the context of our education, one of the key findings we made is that our education system, apart from other normal crises, is skewed towards knowledge content. The skills that is required to derive the economy is completely absent. And therefore, we need to do a lot to refocus our educational system to develop the necessary skills that we require in the country. On the health sector, we all know how the health sector is in terrible crisis. Issues of inadequate manpower, issues of equipment, and this is particularly at the rural areas. We've made efforts to address some of these key challenges in the rural areas, particularly relating to maternal health and infant mortality. But I think we still have a lot of challenges in that respect, and we must have to work towards that. Then, of course, there are issues relating to inconsistency in the implementation of our policies. We have the 2004 National Population Policy for Sustainable Development and the Strategic Plan of 2008. Almost 2 decades into that policy, we are yet to make any major breakthrough in achieving the policy targets. And there are several reasons for this, particularly the complete absence of monitoring and evaluation mechanisms to make sure that we achieve those targets. So these are some of the major findings we made, and appropriate recommendations were made to Mr. President to address these findings.
Thank you very much, Professor Shah. Let's bring in again Dr. Usman, whom we earlier introduced as Acting Director of Studies. Also, all right, so Dr. Usman, sorry, not Dr. Usman. All right, so Professor Shah, let's bring you in for this conversation. Sorry, I'm mixing up the names. Look, lead us more into the substance of your findings and recommendations. Because virtually, I mean, there's nothing that has been said so far that is not, if you like, in the public domain, which is not to diminish the value of your research findings. When you say we have a skills gap, what kind of skills did you identify as missing in our environment? And what also did you find in terms of the utility or the lack of it of the wide array of skill acquisition programs that you hear being launched in states, and then you have a number of centers and so on and so forth being opened all over the place? That's one. We have a skills gap, no question about it, and yet Nigerian professionals, particularly those in the health services sector, are emigrating ever so frequently. So what are we dealing with?
Much. The same concerns that you have raised were the same concerns that the study brought out forcefully, and Mr. President, listened to us, explain these problems. The educational system in Nigeria, like we all know, has a history, and that history is basically to tell the story that we have basically been producing people who would have knowledge, of issues. And so the point that Dr. Suman, has made, and also you have also made, is that we were not built in such a way as to develop skills of doing things, skills of producing, skills for manufacturing. And that's one big area that is missing. And so that finding, came out very, very clear. And what we recommended at that level is probably to look, is to ensure that we look at our curriculum, again, at different levels. We're even suggesting that at the primary school level, we need to review the curriculum in such a way that at that lower level, the younger ones would continue, would start learning skills of doing things. In the past, those of us who went to the primary schools in the 50s and early 60s, there were little bits, of those skills acquisition subjects. We want this to come back. We want a review of the curriculum, at the secondary school level. Some few universities are beginning to think about this, and they have tweaked their curriculum to ensure that skills are embedded, in their own studies. And this is what we are telling the federal government. We know that the institutions in charge of curriculum development, ensuring that standards, are maintained, are also thinking about that. And we want the federal government, to put in place mechanisms, to fast track this. Secondly, the point you've asked about skills acquisition programs around the country. Yes, there are. At both federal level and at also various state levels. We are we observed and we told Mr. President that yes, these skills acquisition programs are important. They are working in some states, but they're not working in some states. We made the point that the coverage, of this skills acquisition program is so limited, so that the funding that goes, to them. It's not enough, to cover a wide range of youths that are expected to acquire these skills. So issues of funding, were raised. Issues of coordination, just like has been raised by Dr. Suman, is also there. So if we have a situation where these programs are coordinated, from the federal level to the state level. Some local government levels, are also have developed their own skills acquisition programs. If we have this coordination, we have this understanding that we're all moving towards the same direction, wanting to achieve the same goals, I think that we would reap or would harvest more than what we are currently doing. So the point about the curriculum, we also pointed to Mr. President that, look, TVET, it's about technological education, that this has to be taken very seriously. The institutions that are available that are supposed to be training our young ones, in TVET, they are not doing very well. Because the TVET itself, we discovered, through the studies, of the institutions, that the young ones think that the TVET education is for the weak students. So they would want to rather go and read banking or business administration, which they think can fetch them, So we want a situation whereby all our institutions, all our leaders, within those institutions, should play a very good role in making sure that this level of education, is brought to bear, and the nation, will be happy for it.
All right, thank you, Professor Shah. And my question will go to both of you. Anyone can take it. You talked about reviewing the school's curriculum. I do remember sometime, I think it was during the tenure of Professor Ubioma, who is now the Executive Secretary of NECO. A review of, the curriculum was also effected, and subjects like innovation, entrepreneurship, technology were added, to the subject list at the secondary school level. So I'm wondering, in what context did your recommendation focus in this review? And did you also consider that there could also be gap in the way we teach and the quality of those who teach the subjects?
Made the point, because when these reviews of curriculum are done, one basic problem would be those who are supposed to train. Many of them have not really been trained. Number two, the pedagogy, the way you teach, will be different from the way you want to teach people to acquire knowledge. And so the pedagogy would require that you need to have good laboratories, you need to have good workshops, you need to have good places where people can develop these skills and dispense these skills to the society where these skills are required, so that we can have the relationship between the classroom and the society where they can practice. Now, these are absent. So we have a reviewed curriculum, but the practice, is absent. And we are asking Mr. President that those institutions that are in those areas and that require to do the needful, should really try so that Nigerians would be happy for it. Training of technical teachers is absolutely important. And if we do not do this, in phases, if we don't budget, for this training, if we don't budget for the expansion of infrastructure in those institutions, then we would not go very, very far. So yes, I agree with you. Some level of changes or reforms, in the curriculum, has been done, but the implementation, has been the problem. Dr. Nazar.
Well, if I may add, just like you've mentioned, the last review on our curriculum, particularly with the basic and post-basic levels of our education, this was conducted by the National Education Resource Development Council, the body charged with the development of curriculum at that level. They introduced about 34 different skills, which were expected to have implemented, particularly at the post-basic level. I can assure you, based on the research we've conducted at the National Institute, particularly with the basic public schools, most of these 34 traits that have been introduced we neither have the teachers nor the equipment to teach them. So if you said a particular school takes fishery or carpentry or metalwork, you don't have the teachers to teach, you don't have the equipment to teach, you only examine the students based on theory. When they graduate, what do you expect? They're as good as beginners in that particular trade. So if you compare this, sometimes in 2017, the National Institute were in Brazil on a study tour, and we found a system, actually a system that is almost 100% funded by the private sector. They call the body Senai. As at that time, they've trained over 2 million Brazilian youth on skills. Children as young as 12, 14, they are introduced directly into TVET education. And you don't have to come out of that program looking for a job. In fact, you are a potential employer. So these are the kind of issues that we must look into. And one of the major radical recommendations we made to Mr. President is, look, we have the NYSC scheme after graduation. Probably is good for some other purposes, unity and some other issues. But if you want to really attack TVET education to provide the necessary skills, you have to go a bit more radical. And we recommended that after the basic education, that the secondary school, we should introduce 1 year compulsory TVET education before that student moves to tertiary education. So if we have those...
I was just wondering, Dr. Usman, we're sorry to interject. We're getting pressed for time. Both yourself and Professor Sharp may take this question. I'm a bit curious when you say that we don't have the appropriate personnel for TVET skills. There are federal colleges of education, technical, in different parts of the country. There used to be one in Gombe, I believe. There's one at Akoka, that's opposite University of Lagos. What is happening? What did your study find with regard, for instance, to the institutions that are supposed to deliver technical education? Technical schools that are supposed to be under state governments, polytechnics that sometimes are even teaching liberal courses, and so on and so forth. And in addition to that, when you say skill acquisition, did you see the tension in these skill acquisition programs that appear to have been either floated and the centers built for political gains rather than actually delivering skills? You put people there for 2-3 months, they say they have learned tailoring, you give them sewing machines and the TV cameras will come and so on and so forth. In those days, when you hear that somebody is a London-trained tailor, you know how long it takes the person. Did we find, I mean, rather you now, did you find out this, in terms of your study and how we need to break it down? The Brazilian system is fine, but we already have a system here. Can we exhume it and reform it?
You are talking right on point. You see, one of the major issues we found out is this uncoordinated way we do things. And unfortunately, we put a lot of politics into serious national issues. You go and construct what is supposed to be a technical or vocational center. You didn't equip it, you didn't provide the necessary teaching skills, you just do it for political purposes. Now, what we need to do is, this issue of TVET, it cuts across all the 3 tiers of government if you look at our constitution. Now, we need, one of the major recommendations we made is the need to have a Human Capital Development Council at the national level, where we can have all these programs integrated and phase them out. What we have now is dispersion of resources at all levels of government without achieving nothing. Unfortunately, in this country, if you have the means and you are building a house now, when you come to finishing, you prefer to bring a Togolese or a Ghanaian to do your tiling or even your painting. That is terrible.
All right, we'll just have to leave it at that. Dr. Nasruddin Usman, Acting Director of Studies, National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, NABS. Let me also appreciate Professor Dungpeng Shah, Director, Research, National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, NABS. Both of you, we'd like to appreciate you for your contributions on Good Morning Nigeria today. Thank you. And so that's been Good Morning Nigeria this Friday. I am Claire Delabu Abdurazak. From me and the rest of the production crew, we're wishing you a pleasant weekend and asking you to join us again on Monday.
I'm Kingsley Osadola. Don't forget, take personal responsibility. COVID-19 is back and the numbers are climbing. Enjoy your weekend and stay safe.
This is the network service of the NTA.